academic sources. And we're talking a lot about knowledge, and because that's what social scientists do, is that they go out and they produce and find things out with a process, with a method, so that they can confidently say this is how it is. And of course it's constantly going to be tested and it's going to be explored, but really what they're doing is producing what we know. They're producing knowledge. So another aspect of this is how they go about doing it, because you need money. You need money to do this. You need to be able to have graduate students that are going to be helping you in the project, and they in turn go on and get their employment after they complete their degrees. And so there's two different types of research out there. So how do you produce knowledge? Knowledge is produced through research. Seems basic enough, but we often don't think about how we know things. Where do we get what we know? How is that generated and then transferred? So we talked about the transfer Friday because we were talking about publications, and today we're stepping back and talking about the generation of knowledge. So there are two types.
I didn't even look at your schoolwork in bed, but it's okay.
So there are two types of research, basic research and applied research. And now that you've gotten that down, I think I'll erase, then we'll just draw up two columns so you can get it neatly in your notes side by side. Again, it's all under the heading production of knowledge. I'm going to start erasing on the top. And there are two broad areas of research. One is called basic, and one is called applied. And this is how we get knowledge produced. And it has a lot to do with, again, the backing of it, who's going to fund it, and why. And so I'm going to rewrite this up a little higher. So you're going to have basic research here. Just make two columns. Leave yourself enough space underneath of it to write it in your notes. So we'll do a okay, try to be as neat as possible here. Basic research, it sounds so simple, but it's actually the most advanced in many, many ways. So basic research, the first thing you might want to get down is that this is research and judgments. That seems so simple, but it's research that's going to be generated and judged and sponsored by social scientists. It's driven from the field, okay? So it's solely out of the interest of each discipline. Now, why is that such a big deal to get down? It's a big deal because you'll start seeing how it differs from applied research. So in basic research, the research and judgments are made by social scientists, meaning what is researched and how that research is judged or done or proved or discussed is driven from the social science. It's the professor sitting in her office thinking, oh, that's a great idea, I'm going to go explore it. Applied research, on the other hand, is research that is judged by sponsors who are outside the field of social science. a corporation, maybe by a Department of Justice, maybe by a hospital that wants research done. Okay? So it's outside of the social sciences themselves. It's a separate institution. Because of these two differences, there's a great deal of freedom on the basic research side for what people want to do. So a great deal of freedom in choosing problems or topics to explore. As opposed to applied research, where it's a rather narrow definition of what you can research and explore because you're confined to the demands of your employer, or the corporation that's sponsoring you. So research problems are more narrowly defined. And confined to the demands of, let's say you work for Bombardier, you're going to be working on a specific design project for their plane. You're not going to be, in general, investigating airflow. That's a science definition. Or if you're working in a hospital and they want to know specifically how to make the nursing staffing more efficient, that's what you're going to be looking at. You wouldn't necessarily combine doctors or physiotherapists into that combination. It would be narrowly defined as nurses, so it's not going to be as broad. So you're confined to the demands of the employer, who you work for, or the sponsor. Coca-Cola wants to find out why students are no longer drinking Coke in the morning. That's going to be a specifically driven, targeted research, and that's called applied research. Another factor that goes into basic research is that the driving goal is simply to contribute to knowledge. And that's where we get the word basic, to basic theoretical knowledge in your field. So you would do a lit review, find out what's been done. How could you add to that discussion? How could you find out something more? How could you drive that discussion further? So it's much more theoretical. It's much more open. It's much more tied to the science, social sciences, and it's driven by social scientists. As opposed to the driving goal on the applied field, the driving goal is to make money, is to somehow have a practical payoff. Whether that's profit or an immediate return. And you need to have uses for the results. Okay, so we're doing X so that we can achieve Y and that we can make a profit or that we can get something done. Okay? So it's very different. It's going to produce a different result. Success, then, getting a little low for those in the back. How would you define success for basic science research? Is that you publish your results in an academic journal. And share or have an impact with other social scientists. That may be long-term. Sorry, this is so low. So your payoff might not be for several years, but what you've dropped into the bucket is going to have results someday, okay? Might have far-reaching consequences. You don't know yet. You're out there, you're exploring, you're doing different ideas, and it builds. Whereas success for applied research is that the success would be the results are used by your sponsors in their decision making or in what they do. So it's a very different set. Now you can get good research on both sides. What do you think a caution would be on this side of the board? Sorry, I know you. Nika, would you be able to shut that computer next to you, just so they might have a chance of seeing a little bit better? Thank you. Thanks very much. So this is applied. That's basic. They've each got their merits. The plus side on this one, independent research, it's not going to be driven by profit. It's not driven by corporate interest. It's just supposedly unbiased research. So the pros of this one tends to be more rigorous in terms of testing, and in theory, there's less chance for bias. Can you think of a negative to basic research? This is the type of research that most university professors would aspire to. That's why you give them tenure so that they're not biased in their research, or they can just explore and think and add to knowledge. Can you think of any negatives to this one? Yeah?
Maybe it pays less?
Pays less, for sure. Although it's comfortable, but it's not going to pay off big. Anything else? That might be a negative to the just basic? Yeah, go ahead then.
It might be hard to find the topics.
Might be hard to find a topic. Go ahead.
It takes longer.
It might take longer. So it might take longer. And because it takes longer, one of the things that social scientists, did you have, yeah, go ahead.
They have less money to do what they're doing.
Yeah, less money, so how to fund what they're doing, so money to fund. So who's going to sponsor them just to do basic research? Oftentimes we rely on taxpayers through the government to insert grants, or that's for science, social science grants that are out there. But it becomes a little bit harder. It's a bit circular, because if it does take longer and it is basic and it's more theoretical, it's hard to share with the public why you're doing what you're doing is important. So they sometimes tend to be doing something that seems so abstract that in the end someday will pay off. But it's a little bit harder to simply explain to the public why it's important. Most of our advances and things that we have today have been accidents of or outcomes of basic research. It's a really important aspect, and the scientific standards are much higher, for sure. Now this one, what are the pluses of this one applied? What's a positive?
You have sponsors.
Sure, you're going to have the money, so you're going to get the job done, so you have the money to do your research. What else is a positive about applied? Go ahead.
It doesn't take that long.
That's right, it's shorter. And That's also its weakness, but it's, it gets done faster. What else is a strength? It's almost the exact opposite of this one. It could be, yeah, that's going to be a negative for sure. But another strength is that you can justify what you're doing. Justify easier. Now that doesn't make it better, but you can justify it easier. We're doing this research so that we can achieve this goal. And by September, we'll have it done and we'll have it in production. Boom. That's our result. We're going to do this survey on Coca-Cola in the morning so that we can increase sales by December, and we're going to see a payoff in the first fiscal quarter of the following year. Boom. Done. The big problem with applied research, so warning, is that because you want quick results can lead to messy research. And messy means unreliable. It could mean biased. Okay? So there are some serious concerns about applied research. Unfortunately, from my perspective, editorial, so you can disagree with me, feel free, as long as you defend it rationally. It seems in the past 15 years, 20 years especially, there's a shift to doing much more applied research, where we want results that are funded, where if you apply for funding, you have to have a corporate sponsor that's going to put in 20% of the money so that it's not just the government putting in funds. So it becomes tense. Now there are other countries like Great Britain, that's why we get such good videos from Great Britain talking about social science research, because the government funds it. And in theory, the government is supposed to be neutral in what they're looking for. They just offer a certain set amount of money to researchers to do their projects. And a lot of universities, of course, offer the funding as well because they want the good research. So those are the two differences in approaches. And then how you do it, we're going to take, if you have your textbook, you can share with somebody. Get out a fresh sheet of paper. And what you would do, of course, is that you're going to write up a proposal. And that's what you're doing for Friday. And so Friday in paper copy, your proposals are due. You need to turn to page 126 if you have this book, or 122 if you have the old book. Get out a fresh sheet of paper, and there, you'll see a table on page 126. And it looks like this. So you come up with this idea that, yeah, you're either going to do research, basic research, or applied research, whichever one you need, or whichever one you're choosing to do, you're going to have to put forth a proposal of how you're going to do it. So chapter 7 is an overview of proposals, of how you're going to do your research. So to write a little bit more in your notes, if you want. So the production of knowledge, you've got basic, you have basic and applied. That was under letter A, and then you made your table in your notes. So B, and the next step, once you decide if you're going to do basic or applied research, is that you need to write a research proposal. And you, in a small way, are doing this. Now, it actually is very, very complicated. It takes lots of effort. You might spend a whole semester as a grad student putting together a proposal, doing the legwork for it, finding out what you're going to do. So, going back to your original, production of knowledge, a basic applied, this is B, write a research proposal. So in chapter 7 lays out, very briefly, the options for social science research. And this chapter, of course, is biased towards sociology and psychology and its approach, because this whole textbook is for a sociology approach. And so in chapter 7, it lays out just what you need in your research proposal. So on page 121, there you have basic applied. And then they also talk about evaluation as a different type of research, because you can do assessments on how things are going. So how's the daycare system going in Quebec? And then you would run an evaluation of that just to assess the pros and the cons. Right now at Dawson, the psychology profile is running the chairs of the psychology profile are running an assessment on how effective the psych profile is. So they're going to be doing a survey with teachers, with support staff, with current students, with former students, to find out how they could improve the psych profile. So you can see the basic and applied choice, so you choose that. And then you have to draw from your repertoire of how you're going to do your research. So the table on page 126, if you've got this book, or in the old book it's 122, there's a survey, or there's a square chart here. And what I'd like you to do on a separate sheet of paper, just by going back briefly, I mean keep it brief, bullet form only, it should only take about 10 minutes if you're skimming. But it goes through the different choices: survey, observation, unobtrusive, research methods, and within survey is the interview. And what I'd like you to do, it says here, you don't have to recopy the first row for experiment, but I want you on a separate sheet of paper to do the 4 columns: technique, defined, strengths, weaknesses, and then do survey, observation, and unobtrusive method, okay? So you're going to, on your sheet of paper, this is what you're going to write down: technique, defined, strengths, weaknesses. Do not recopy experiment, so just start then over here with survey. And then you'll have a row for observation. You're going to write something else on this sheet, so if you can get this all on the same side or the top half of your sheet, that's great. And then unobtrusive methods. We're going to explore each one of these in depth, but this is just your general interview, or introduction to interviews and surveys. So you'd go back to 124, you'd quickly look through. It says technically a survey is a series of questions asked of a number of people, blah, blah, blah. Survey method is popular, so surveys are especially appropriate. Another strength, and then it goes into weaknesses. So as you skim the text, you're going to be able to fill in your table. So the technique, wait, maybe I didn't line that up. Sorry, there should be over here. Technique, this, sorry. And then you'd have 3 columns, define it, and then do some strengths and weaknesses. So survey, a list of questions, that's defined, and then some strengths and some weaknesses. It'll only take you about 10 minutes to do this, so fill in for each of these as you skim through your textbook. And then when you're done, we're going to move on with a short video about ethics. So set your sheet of paper that you're going to turn into me to the side for a minute. Go back to your notes that you keep for class, and just write down under surveys that to prepare a survey is very, very rigorous, and it takes time. So this is a survey approach for measuring food security in the United States, meaning how comfortable do households feel that they can have enough money to put food on the table. It is quite long. This is just an assessment of their survey, and it's a report that they're putting out. You can see it runs to 75 pages, I think, overall, supporting their research project. So this is a survey. So what you're going to do here, if you choose a survey for Friday, when you hand in your paper copy of your research plan, if you're choosing a survey, and that's how you want to gather your information, that's great. At this point, you don't have to have the questions written down, but you'd want to be aware that you'll have to generate questions that you'd want to show to me to make sure that they're worded properly. And I think we'll have time in class the following week to maybe practice or something if you're going to choose a survey. You don't have to. You can, again, choose to interview someone, or you could do unobtrusive or content analysis that you just looked at. But it's really fascinating when you start getting into actual research at a professional level of how much time and care goes into thinking about the goal of why you're conducting the research, why you're doing the survey, and then how you're going to frame the questions. So then you start getting at the types of questions, and there's a philosophy behind each question. So there's a lot of thought that goes into a good questionnaire. So this first quote, which of these statements best describes the food eaten in your household in the last 12 months? We always have enough food to eat and the kinds of food we want. We have enough to eat, but not always the kinds of food we want. But sometimes we don't have enough to eat, or often we don't have enough to eat. And those words, kinds, enough, often, you can imagine a group of people sitting around a table trying to get at, will this give us a fair chance at getting a fair response? So it takes a lot of thought. And there's different goals in different sections, optional preliminary screen. Then there's a screen to see if they should take the survey. So surveys in social science can get very, very complicated. On our level, you're going to ask 6 to 8 questions to people in the atrium, most likely, which is fine. It gives you a flavor and you'll be able to do something with those results. But I just wanted to show you that when it comes to what's really happening at a professional level, it can get very intense. Okay? And then this is another way of formatting, in summary, what the questions are actually asking. Question 2 is, it might be more elaborately worded, but the goal is that they're worried. Are they worried that their food would run out? Could they afford to eat balanced meals? Couldn't feed a child a balanced meal? That sort of thing. So that goes into survey planning. Now for doing research that relies on an interview, and I'm going to have people who choose interview fill out a similar form. I wouldn't interview for this class more than 3 people. I think that would be plenty because there's actually a lot that goes into it. You're going to have some sort of protocol form, which I'll post and provide for those of you who are using the interview format. So it'll look something like this. So you'd write down the date, the time, the location, the interviewers, and the interviewee, and you get them to sign a release form. I want you to do that just even if it's research methods class. Yes? You can, if it's a good, you have to justify why this is going to get at your research. Okay, so if you can defend it, like this is a person who's been through it, and we've talked about your example, I think that's a really strong case. If it's, I'm going to interview my friend for and it has no relations whatsoever, you might need to defend that a little bit more and say why that's a good person to interview. And then and then what's important, I think, is to set up so that you have, if you're going to take notes during your interview, you'd have a separate sheet of paper ready, and you would turn this in with your final research project. So any of your notes you took during your interview, or if you're recording it and then transcribing it, you might send me the recording attachment as a file. So there is a form to doing interviews. It's not just sitting down and talking, and it would be something like, here's my first question, these are the type of things, I'm going to jot notes down, here's my next question. And so that's the type of thing. I'm just not warning, but a heads up. If you choose interview, you're going to have to go through this sort of process. It's part and parcel of producing your final research project. If you choose content analysis, you're going to still have to justify what kind of resource you're going to use. Okay? So that's the type of feedback I can give you once I see your research project coming in. So again, that research project is due on Friday. The instructions were posted on Leia. So between now and Friday, if you have any questions about the 3 different parts, part 1 is laying out what your topic is, changing it to a problem, asking some questions. Part 2 is you telling me what approach you're going to take, whether it's survey, interview, or content analysis. And part 3 is 2 academic sources that you found with a little paragraph underneath of it called an annotation that shows why you think they might be helpful in your research. And that's it. So your proposal shouldn't be more than 2 pages, maybe 3. Check it for spelling. It is a paper copy that's due. So you'll bring that to class on Friday morning. Okay? But that's what it's all about. And we're just sort of, it's a pale sort of shadow of what they do in the big leagues, I guess, but it gives you a taste of being a social scientist in a small way. So I look forward to seeing what you're doing, and most students have a lot of fun doing it because they choose a topic that interests them and they run with it, so it's great. Okay, so letter C in your notes before you do, oh, you two have to go, okay. sorry, so that to presentation. And so in the notes, under C, and then, so before you turn back to your sheet of paper that you did your chart on just a bit ago, I want you to write down video, and it's ethics in funding research. Just so that you have it in your notes that you watched this video. You can find it on YouTube if you ever want to re-watch it for any reason. So get that in your notes, and then go back to that sheet of paper that you just did your table on, and either turn it over on the bottom of it so that we use the same sheet of paper. Write down this question. I want you to answer this question as you write. So on the sheet of paper that you've already started that you're going to turn in to me, go ahead and add this video question, and the question is, what is, oh, sorry, missed a word. What is the implication of who funds research? And it's called the funding effect. So this gentleman on YouTube is going to answer that question. So I just want you to briefly answer it. And so on the sheet of paper you hand in to me, you'll have your table filled in, and then you'll have this answer to the video. Yeah?
Miss, what was A?
A was basic applied.
Oh, okay, like our note.
Yeah, in your notes.
Was
And
I
then,
supposed to do this in my notebook?
no, that you're handing in.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
B. And
Yeah.
now we're doing C, and we're also handing that in.
Yeah, I think some people are keeping track in their notes A, B, and C, and then they've got the separate sheet of paper they're handing in.
Oh, like the.
However you want to arrange yourself is
But this
fine.
is important to have in notes?
Yeah, you're going to hand in that sheet for sure, the one with the table on it.
But it's important to have in notes as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so here is the, okay, so now what we're doing is watching about a 10-minute clip on the importance of funding and how that affects research. And you're looking to answer this one question as you watch the video. And you're going to hand that in. So I'm hoping it's on the same sheet of paper. Okay, here we go.